Lucie Wilde was 26 years old. She lived in a secluded, minimalist cabin nestled in the dense, silent woods of rural Sweden, a world away from the glare of the industry that had made her, for a brief, blazing moment, one of its most talked-about stars. The cabin was sparsely furnished, a sanctuary of quiet and solitude, a deliberate contrast to the overwhelming sensory overload of her past. Her annual income was a modest $150,000, a sum earned not from performing, which she had completely abandoned, but from a remote, anonymous job as a graphic designer and the small, steady royalties from the limited but legendary filmography that continued to circulate online. She was a ghost in the machine, a myth, remembered for one thing above all else: the most extreme, gravity-defying, and famously all-natural breasts the industry had ever seen. But the woman who now found peace in the whispering pines and the stark Scandinavian light was a fortress built around a girl named Lotta, whose story began not in a quest for fame, but in a painful, desperate search for visibility in a world that made her feel like a freak. Lotta grew up on an isolated farm in the Swedish countryside, a quiet, introverted child who felt more at home with animals than with people. Her body developed early and in a way that felt like a curse. By the age of 15, she was already towering over her classmates, her frame tall and strong from farm work. But it was her chest that made her a pariah. She was blessed, or afflicted, with a condition of extreme macromastia. Her breasts were not just large, they were colossal, heavy, and profoundly, undeniably natural, their weight a constant physical and emotional burden. They drew stares, whispers, and cruel taunts. Boys called her cow, and girls excluded her out of a mixture of pity and discomfort. Her face, framed by lank, blonde hair, was often hidden, her blue eyes, the color of a winter lake, perpetually downcast to avoid seeing the reactions she provoked. She felt like a monster, a walking spectacle, her own body a prison she could not escape. Her only solace was a boy named Elias, the son of the neighboring farmer. He was quiet like her, a gentle soul who loved the land and its creatures. He was the only one who never stared, who never made a joke. He saw Lotta, not her chest. They bonded over their shared love for the forest, spending long hours walking together in comfortable silence or talking about their dreams of leaving the farm for Stockholm. Their love was a slow, tender bloom in the harsh landscape. He was her first kiss, her first love, her first and only confidant. He made her feel, for a few precious years, almost normal, almost beautiful. But the outside world intruded. During a trip to a market in a nearby town, a tourist, a slick American photographer, spotted Lotta. His eyes didn't register disgust or pity, they lit up with a predatory, commercial glee. He handed her his card. "With a body like that, you could be a millionaire in America," he said, his voice dripping with opportunism. "You're wasting yourself here." He called her a natural wonder. Elias, standing beside her, saw the look in the man's eyes and was filled with a protective rage. He told the man to get lost, but the seed had been planted in Lotta's mind. The words natural wonder echoed there, a stark contrast to a lifetime of being called a freak. The tension fractured her relationship with Elias. He saw the photographer's offer as exploitation, a confirmation of every fear he had about the world beyond their valley. Lotta, however, began to see it as a potential key to her prison. Their arguments grew more frequent and more bitter. He begged her to see herself as he saw her, to be happy with their simple life. She accused him of wanting to keep her hidden away, of being ashamed of her. The final heartbreaking blow came when he, in a moment of frustrated anger, said, "If you go, you're just proving them right. You're just a sideshow act." The words, from him, were a mortal wound. She packed a single bag that night. She didn't say goodbye. She used the money she had saved from selling eggs and walked to the bus stop, leaving Elias and her old life behind forever. She was not Lotta the freak anymore. She would become Lucie Wilde, and she would make the world look. Her first professional shoot in Prague, where the photographer had connections, was a surreal and dehumanizing experience. The crew treated her not as a person, but as a unique prop. The camera feasted on her body, focusing obsessively on her extreme proportions. She was paid €5,000. As she held the cash, she felt a grim sense of victory. She had taken the source of her greatest shame and turned it into capital. The industry, she quickly learned, had a voracious appetite for her unique look. She was flown to Los Angeles, where she became an overnight sensation. Lucie Wilde was a phenomenon. But the girl inside, Lotta, was more invisible than ever. The first part of her journey was a painful rebellion and a tragic love story. The second would be a descent into the darkest corners of an industry that consumed her uniqueness and spat out the hollow shell that remained. The rise of Lucie Wilde was a media firestorm. She was hailed as a one-in-a-billion natural wonder. Her image was everywhere, her name synonymous with a specific, almost surreal, hyper-voluptuous ideal. She worked relentlessly, her unique body guaranteeing sales and clicks. The money was immense. She bought a sterile, modern apartment in Los Angeles, but it never felt like a home. It felt like a storage unit for the commodity that was Lucie Wilde. The performances were physically grueling. The weight of her own body caused chronic back pain that she silently endured. She was prescribed strong painkillers, and she began to rely on them just to get through the day. The industry that celebrated her also isolated her. She was a niche within a niche. Other performers viewed her with a mix of awe and pity. The men were either intimidated or saw her as the ultimate conquest. Relationships were impossible. Every interaction felt transactional. She thought of Elias constantly, his words, sideshow act, haunting her every time she saw her own image on a website banner. The love she had thrown away for this felt like the only real thing she had ever known, and she had destroyed it. The guilt and loneliness were a cancer, and she fed it with pills and alcohol. The facade of Lucie Wilde began to crack under the weight of its own emptiness. The bubbly, accommodating persona she tried to project in interviews was thin and brittle. During a particularly demanding scene, she suffered a severe back spasm and collapsed on set. The director, impatient, yelled for someone to get her up. As she lay on the cold, hard floor, surrounded by people who saw her only as a malfunctioning asset, she hit her rock bottom. The physical pain was excruciating, but the emotional agony was worse. She was not a person, she was a spectacle, and the spectacle was breaking down. She checked herself into a private clinic, not just for her back, but for her addiction and her shattered mental health. It was there, in the stark silence of recovery, away from the cameras and the demands, that Lotta began to resurface. The therapy was agonizing. She had to confront the deep self-loathing that had driven her to embrace her own objectification. She had to grieve for the life with Elias, for the simple, quiet love she had sacrificed on the altar of a desperate need for validation. She realized she hadn't escaped her prison, she had just built a more glamorous, more public one. Upon her release, she made a series of radical decisions. She walked away from the adult industry entirely. She liquidated her assets in LA, severed ties with her management, and used a significant portion of her savings to pay for a complex and risky breast reduction surgery. It was not an act of shame, but the ultimate act of reclamation. She was taking back control of her body, her health, and her life. The recovery was long and painful, but for the first time, the pain felt like it was leading towards healing, not decay. She returned to Sweden, but not to the farm. She bought the secluded cabin in the woods, a place where she could finally be alone with herself. She changed her name legally, shedding Lucie Wilde completely. She started working remotely as a designer, using skills she had long neglected. The silence of the forest, which had once felt lonely, now felt like a balm. Now, at 26, the woman who was once Lucie Wilde is finally, simply, Lotta. The colossal burden is gone, both physically and spiritually. Her blue eyes, once clouded with pain and medication, are now clear and calm. Her body, while still bearing the scars of her past, is her own again. She lives a small, quiet life, and she is at peace. Her story is a haunting cautionary tale about the price of trading your soul for visibility. She was a girl who was made to feel like a freak, who became a star by selling her freakishness, and who only found herself when she had the courage to walk away from it all. She learned that being seen is not the same as being known, and that the only validation that truly matters is the one you can finally, mercifully, give to yourself.